You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing, beautiful listeners. Welcome. Thank you for joining me today. Quick message here. I want to briefly talk about something that I know so many of my clients, myself, and women that share their experiences with me after divorce, especially after what I call life-saving divorce. That is that feeling of being stuck in the past. And it's not because you haven't maybe tried to move forward. I don't even see it as because you're doing something wrong. I see it because your nervous system has not fully had the chance to process what's happened, especially if you're still missing some of the pieces, putting some of those pieces together of the reality that was hidden from you, the parts of your ex that were hidden, that a lot of you are having come out maybe even with a vengeance right now. There's a lot that is still needing to be processed. You might notice your mind going back to certain memories over and over and over again, trying to put those pieces of the puzzle together. You might find yourself replaying conversations, replaying discoveries, replaying how you discovered. Is there more that I'm missing in that discovery? Especially those of you that never got full disclosure. Maybe you're replaying those moments that everything changed. That is a shock to your system. It is normal then for your system to also then be on such high alert and in hypervigilant mode. Talked a lot about this in the Waiting for the Shoe to Drop episode, if you haven't listened to that one. But the nervous system is like, okay, that was such a shock. Everything changed in my entire world. That sucked. So if we can stay on top of things, if we can worry about things enough, figure out if that happened and this happens, what if this happens, then I'll do. If we can figure all that out, even be ahead of the game 30 seconds prior, it's not as bad. Right? All of that makes so much sense. So now we're living on edge, living in rumination when nothing is even happening right now in this moment in your life. You might get triggered by something that feels really small, like a song or a smell, a text notification. Maybe you see a public couple walking in public and that triggers you. Then all of a sudden your body reacts before your brain even understands what's happening. So you might even start to feel anxious or irritated or annoyed and react. Maybe you snap at your child, or maybe you snap at the cashier. You haven't quite put head body hasn't quite connected the dots there. The racing of the heart, the stomach dropping, the chest tightening, again, thoughts spiraling. Those are not just thoughts. These are the experiences that your body is still holding on to from the shock of all that you went through. In my work with women every single day, and men every single day, I see this all the time. It's shared with me over and over. Here's the thing too, is that kind of like what Terry Cole was talking about, where in her practice also, she started to notice that this codependency was coming up, but it wasn't from women that were weak. It wasn't from women that couldn't take care of themselves or weren't independent. I see the same thing. This is triggers are happening and we're having these responses, not because women aren't doing the work or are weak or not strong enough. They are doing incredibly hard things and making incredibly hard decisions. Women that have left relationships that are unsafe and healthy, and deeply painful, despite a lot of the consequences, the impacts, I should say, of that. Yet they still feel stuck in the memory, stuck in the questioning, stuck in fear that it could happen again. So what I want you to hear today first is that this pain does not get the final say in your life. We can't let it have a final say in our life. And final say meaning I'm not meant to be in relationships. I'll never be in a relationship again. I guess I can't ever trust it. Those statements right there are giving the pain from your experience the final say in how you live the rest of your life. Healing does not mean that you have to erase the past either. Those two are really important pieces that I hope you hear first and foremost. There are reasons why we can stay stuck in the past. When you experience betrayal, abuse, and a really painful life-saving divorce, it doesn't just impact your thoughts. Like I said, your entire nervous system. When you think about all that your nervous system is involved in, your breathing, your digestive, your respiratory, your cardiovascular, that also impacts how you show up in relationships in the world just on a day-to-day basis. It impacts parts of your brain that's responsible for survival, the parts that scan for danger, the parts that store emotional memories, the parts of your brain that are even not focused on logic. Those parts of your brain are not just focused on logic, they're focused on keeping you safe. When something overwhelming happens, your body goes through and into that protection mode. Those stress hormones are released. Your heart rate increases. The body prepares the fight, flight, freeze, or shut down response, fawn response. And this is really important. Those responses are not the problem. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it's designed to do. I think the challenge here becomes when the stress is ongoing and we don't get that bucket filled and restored and replenished, when the betrayal that you've experienced lasted for years and years and years and years, when the environment that you're in never really feels safe, especially those that are staying in the same house or even in the emotional relationship, even with the ex, body really can't get that sense of safety down to the nervous system. Doesn't the signal of danger, danger doesn't get stopped, right? Just ongoing, ongoing. So what gets left behind is that unprocessed stress, unfinished emotional energy. The nervous system never gets that chance to settle. Sometimes when it starts to feel like it's settling, it feels so foreign because it's in chaos, because we've lived in chaos so long that it almost feels more comfortable going back into the chaos rather than the actual settling. I've talked about that before. That's a whole conversation in of itself, but exhausting, right? Absolutely exhausting. This is why the somatic part of healing is really important to incorporate along with the cognitive behavioral stuff. Yes, it's important to acknowledge our thoughts, reframe, see why we're thinking what we're thinking and where that thinking might be coming from, attachment theory, all of that is really important. And what we call the bottom up approach, the body part of this. This is where I think brain spotting or deep brain reorienting with the somatic interweaves can be very and have been for my clients very beneficial and helpful, especially if you feel like you've done all of the thinking and the analyzing and the talking. Your body is still reacting because sometimes the stress lives in your body. It lives in our shoulders, it lives in our chest, it lives in our stomach, in our jaw. It lives inside, internally. We brace and armor internally. These somatic modalities work directly with the nervous system. We are working on bypassing the prefrontal cortex and getting into that subcortical part of the brain, the deep part of the brain that helps the body process these things that have been blocked by the shock residue. When we experience stress and fear and the emotional pain, and it just builds and builds and builds, if we're in a situation where we're not able to process it, it stores it. Sometimes we think we have to get all of the details and relive every detail, or we have to be able to explain everything perfectly, know all of the things that happened. It's why I've said it's possible to have closure without all of the disclosure, all things disclosed, because when you shift into your body and focus on the internal locus of control, the body leads the process. And over time, you'll start to notice that you can feel less reactive. Maybe when the ex reaches out, you might sleep more peacefully rather than having the rumination and the spinning and the looping keep you up all night. You might feel more of that steadiness during those co parenting interactions where you feel like you've got a little bit more distance between the chaos in their nervous system because you have a little more stability in yours. Or you might notice that you recover faster after those stressful moments. I started the healing process. I would have an interaction with my ex, and it would take me days, if not a week, to recover. I started to notice the recovery wasn't as long the more I healed my nervous system. Doesn't mean the situations become perfect. That's not, there's so much out of our control in that. But your nervous system starts to become regulated. You start to become more in charge of your brain in that thinking as well. One of the biggest misconceptions that I often see in this work and with healing is that we have to throw away all of the good memories that we did experience, or even feeling guilty because we're remembering the good moments from the relationship. When we have a family vacation memory come to mind, when there's laughter, when we think about about something that was funny, a memory that comes up that was funny, or we look back on the early years, maybe for a lot of you before addiction really became full-fledged addiction, before the affair, before the acting out behavior, those early memories can be really sweet and tender, and it can be hard figuring out what to do with those. A lot of times we don't know what to do with those. Do I throw them out? It's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of a thing. Do I have to throw all that out too? Because we're wondering, was any of it real? Was I naive to all of that? Did I imagine that good part, that good moment? Maybe I was wrong the whole time. There's so much of that is very normal as you grasp this type of trauma. The truth is you're allowed to remember the good moments of your marriage. Those memories, the bad ones don't need to cancel out the good ones. It doesn't excuse the betrayal or the harm either. They don't mean that you made a wrong decision to enter the relationship or even made the wrong decision to divorce. It just simply means that your life is complex and you had someone really rupture the relationship and damage your entire sense of reality, which impacted your entire nervous system. That's a big freaking deal. Healing from that doesn't require you to erase your history. Healing allows you to hold the full truth of your story, both the parts that are good and the parts that are hard, painful. When we do the somatic work, we can do that without our body reacting to the past like it's happening present day. That's the difference. The best way that I, at least right now, feel like I can explain that and why the somatic part is really important. When you do leave the relationship and you start to create some space and you cultivate healthier relationships, when you start to create distance from those unhealthy relationship patterns, create distance from the emotional, chaotic regulation a little bit more, you start to feel a little bit more steady or more present. Maybe you're starting to notice that you're responding to some of these things more than reacting. You're giving yourself a little bit of pause bef- before you go into full blown reaction. When we have a reaction where it just feels like I didn't even choose that, that's a trauma response. That's an indicator, okay, we need to do some of that somatic work. But when you create some safety, you feel a little bit calmer during those exchanges, or you worry less about your future and those unknowns. You're not laying in bed trying to plan it all out, figure it all out again to feel that sense of control and safety. You're able to be a little bit more present, start to feel a little bit more like yourself again. Those are signs that we're moving forward. We're taking good, healthy steps forward. And you have a little more energy to do things outside of the basic, like, have to living, have to do to live type of life every day, where you can slow down, have a little fun, doing things you like to do a little bit more. Those are good signs that you're moving forward. When my clients start to notice this and step into this space more intentionally, they realize that they are no longer in that survival mode through divorce, through the relationship, they can start to see that they're really living again. Here's the invitation today to just notice and practice. If you are feeling on edge, if certain memories are hitting harder than you expect from the past, if your interactions with the ex are still leaving your body very tense, very activated, very hypervigilant, you still find yourself uh, stalking their social media or still on Life 360, following them around. If those things are happening, just ask yourself, what do I need right now? That's a hard question for a lot of you to ask. It's a hard question to answer for a lot of you right now. What is it that I need right now in this moment? My body is responding, my body is reacting, my body is doing this or telling me I need to do this. But what is it that I really need just right now? Not tomorrow, not next week, just right now. Slow things down a little bit. Maybe the answer is just a drink of water, a few deep breaths, a short walk, stretch, a moment alone, listening to an uplifting, empowering song, maybe reaching out, calling someone that you trust that is safe to support you. Then that question brings you back into choice, back into agency, back into your control bubble. If you try this practice and just notice even the smallest little shift, even the slightest sense of calm, even a moment where your body just softens a little, that is your nervous system responding and moving towards that post traumatic growth work. This is where the healing begins. Doesn't have to be something huge and big. I promise. Start small, start slow. If you are ready to go deeper, I invite you to schedule a consultation. We can talk about somatic work and how that best works for you right now. You are the chooser in your life, and divorce does not get to decide who you become next. You get to create the life that you want after everything that you have been through, because you can. Take care, everybody.